Stop me if you've heard this one. 3 idiots go into a bank. Okay, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1975 to look at a motion picture that is gritty and dirty and funny and tragic and everything rolled into one. It's a perfect example of 1970s filmmaking, and it is here for you today to take a look back at. We're talking 75's Dog Day Afternoon. Oh, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Anyway, before we go into this anymore, before we wax poetically about how great this thing is, once and again, and as always, do the trailer.
You know something, people? You're going to be remembered the rest of your lives for the day you got held up and kidnapped.
At approximately 3 p.m. on August 22nd, 1972, Sonny Wortzik and Sal Naturile entered the First Brooklyn Savings Bank and attempted a robbery.
Freeze! Nobody move! Get over there!
The attempt failed.
There's no money here.
They picked it up this afternoon. It's only 1100.
This is too much. It's for you. What?
The police arrived.
This is Detective Sergeant Eugene Moretti. What are you doing in there?
For the people of the neighborhood, it was a sideshow.
Sonny! Sonny!
But for Sonny and Sal, the hostages, and the cops, it was a dog day afternoon.
It's all a whim. Rob a bank.
I had a plan. I had it planned. WNEW plays all the hits. Well, you keep away from this bank or we're going to start throwing bodies out the front door one at a time. I'm a Catholic and I don't want to hurt anybody, understand?
How about letting the people out of the bank?
They're keeping me alive. I'm going to let him out.
Sir, can you tell me what the situation is?
All right, who has to go to the bathroom?
Sonny, come on out!
Yeah! It's just a freak show to them anyway.
The most you're gonna get is 5 years. You get out in 1 year, huh?
Kiss me. I mean, I don't know about that guy out there.
Hello, Sonny. You're on the air.
Sonny, Jesus, I was watching it on TV.
Go back there, man!
Why didn't he tell me he needed money?
He wants to kill me so bad he can taste it.
Why rob
a bank when you got a sucker for a mother?
You're starting to get on my nerves.
See that? Put it in your holster!
We're entertainment, right? What do you got for us?
Attica! Attica!
I ain't going back to that prison, Sonny.
Remember Attica? Down! They're coming in the back!
I'm here with my partner and 9 other people. See, we're dying.
Don't, son!
You're gonna see our brains on the sidewalk. They're gonna spill our guts out. Shouldn't let something like that spoil your fun.
Hurry! Don't fire!
Don't fire, don't fire. I can't stand you being a bank robber, Sonny.
Well, I'm trying to talk to you!
Mom, what are you doing down here?
Run.
Where am I gonna run?
Algeria.
Algeria?
Yeah, they got a Howard Johnson's there, so I'm going. 1, we get a helicopter here. 2, takes us to a jet. 3, I'm flying to the tropics. We did it.
Al Pacino. Dog Day Afternoon. A true story.
All right, this motion picture was directed by Sidney Lumet. Now, he's done a slew of things. Let's go through the numbers. We're talking 12 Angry Men. We're talking Serpico, and Network, and The Wiz, and Death Trap, which gets criminally underrated and forgotten, actually, and The Verdict, and Power, and The Morning After, and Prince of the City, and Night Falls on Manhattan, and Long Day's Journey into Night. So, I mean, this guy's got a record. He's got a history. You know he knows how to deliver the goods, so let's just keep on moving. Playing Sonny, Al Pacino. Let's go. Of course, he was in The Godfather 1. He was in The Godfather 2. Hell, he was even in The Godfather 3. And Serpico, and Scarface, and Scent of a Woman, and Carlito's Way, and The Panic in Needle Park, and Injustice for All, which you guys know I've already reviewed, and Sea of Love, and Heat, and Devil's Advocate, and Frankie and Johnny, and Glenn Ross, which people should remember more, Any Given Sunday, The Irishman. So his career is just ridiculous, and it's long, and it's huge. I mean, what he did from 70 up to maybe 93, 94 is just massive. So anyway, Al Pacino, there you go. Next, playing Sal, John Cazale. Holy shit. Some call him Cazale. It's Cazale. Whatever. We are talking about a guy whose career was incredible because it was so incredibly short. We're talking about he was only in The Godfather, The Godfather 2, The Conversation, The Deer Hunter, and this. We're talking about every motion picture he was ever in was nominated for an Academy Award, and shit, 3 of them won. This man's career was insane. An incredibly gifted actor. We'll get more into him later. But I'm just saying his career was short. Did a lot of stage work, but before the camera, it was short. But man, it was memorable. Playing Moretti, Charles Durning. Let's do this. We're talking, he was in Sisters. He was in The Sting, in The Hindenburg, in The Fury, in North Dallas 40, and Tootsie, and Breakheart Pass, and Tough Guys, and The Final Countdown, and Sharky's Machine, and Twilight's Last Gleaming, and The Muppet Movie, in The Greek Tycoon, and I already talked about him before, and When a Stranger Calls. This guy's had a massive career. You know what I mean? He was just one of those guys that knew how to do his job, always did it well. It's just the way it was. Let's keep going. Playing Leon, Chris Sarandon. I brought him up in a couple of the reviews. Let's just go through the numbers. We're talking about he was in stuff like The Sentinel, which I already reviewed. He was in Lipstick and Fright Night and Just Cause, in The Osterman Weekend, in Cuba, Child's Play, The Princess Bride, and TV too. You know, ER, Felicity, Judging Amy, Law and Order. So the guy had a really big career. He's been seen. You see his face, you know him. He was so young here, you might not even remember him. I don't know, whatever. But he was around for a long time. He was actually married to Susan Sarandon. That's how the name came to be. Whatever. Let's keep moving. Playing Mulvaney, Sully Boyar. Not a household name, but he was in some shit. Let's go take a look. We're talking about he was in things like The Entity, and Prizzi's Honor, and The Jazz Singer, and Night of the Juggler, which you know I friggin' love, and the Fort Apache, the Bronx, and the Manhattan Project, and Car Wash, and The Panic in Needle Park, and The Gambler. So, he was one of those guys, if you went to the movies a lot in the 70s, like I did, you got to know his face, like I did. So he was around, he was in a bunch of shit. Also, there is a lot of other faces and names in this motion picture that when you see them, you're going to be like, oh my God, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It runs the gambit. We're talking about people like Susan Peretz. I mean, she was in like a Swing Shift and Honky Tonk Man. And James Broderick, who was in Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, and I can't even tell you how many TV shows. And of course, the one and only, Lance Henriksen. Aliens, Terminator, you name it, he was in it. You know, he had Penelope Allen, sometimes called Penny Allen, but she was in stuff like Bedroom Window, Bad Lieutenant, Carol Kane, come on man, Scrooged, Taxi, come on, she was like a simple, whatever the hell. And you got Judith and Malina, and she was on Addams Family, and she was in Radio Days. So you have a lot of other faces that you're going to see jump out at you. Some ones more than others. Obviously, Lance Henriksen and Carol Kane. Okay. But the other faces in that, they were around. They were in things. That's all that matters. All right, everybody, I'm going to try to do this in 90 seconds or less. So I can keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, so we can get to where we'd much rather be. The summation. You got Sonny. You got Sal. Well, they decide to do something very, very stupid with a friend of theirs and go in and rob a bank. Well, almost instantly things go wrong. Their buddy, he can't handle the pressure. He bails. He takes off down the street. 2 seconds into this, you realize that Sonny and Sal are completely incompetent at robbing a bank. I'm not saying that there are competent people out there at that shit, but you find out really quickly these guys really don't know what the hell they're doing. They're running around. It's almost farcical. They're trying to get a grip on the situation. They're setting things on fire. Everything is falling apart. Finally, guy across the street, he sees something. Just doesn't quite look right. Next thing you know, Sonny and Sal, well, in the bank, get a phone call. Happens to be from a bunch of cops across the street. Not a good look for those guys. Anyway, as the motion picture rolls on, you see that Sonny and Sal are in there, holding their hostages. They're having these conversations with Charles Durning back and forth about what they're going to do, how they're going to get out, how they're going to get released. Strangely, they start to befriend a lot of the people that they're holding hostage. They all start getting kind of along because they realize these guys are kind of inept, especially Sonny. Sal's a little bit more scary. We'll get into that later. Next thing you know, as one of the talking points, the boys are like, we got to get out of town. We need a jet. We need a bus. We need whatever. And I want to talk to my wife. Well, They bring in Sonny's wife. Well, they find one of his wives. He's married to a woman named Angie and a guy named Leon. Is what it is. Anyway, he comes into the scene, does some talking with Sonny. The crowd outside is getting wrapped up in this because it turns into a media sensation. And finally, after sitting for an entire day in a hot, sweaty bank with a whole bunch of phone calls and a whole bunch of screaming back and forth between Sonny and the cops outside, the bus shows up. The airport trip takes place. But will they make it? Did they make it? How do you know they didn't? Well, it was based on a true story. So you damn well know they didn't make it, but it ain't the point. I'm not going to tell you how this thing exactly turns out. It is what it is. Let's get rolling. That's all you need to know. Okay, everybody. Does Dog Day Afternoon work? Yes, yes. For the love of God, yes. Dog Day Afternoon works. It truly is one of the great motion pictures of the 1970s. Yes, it was based on a true story that took place in 1972, and if you ever want to look that up, the reality is probably even crazier than the motion picture itself. I'm not going to get into all the details. I'm not going to take it apart too much, but yeah, the guy Sonny, aka the dog, in real life they made documentaries, quite a character. But let's stick to the movie and why this movie works. Let's get the big three out of the way immediately. The directing, perfect. It's one of those motion pictures. This thing grabs the 1970s in all its glory. You see New York City, it's framed perfectly, it's shown to you perfectly, and you are watching a movie that makes you feel like you're there. You feel the energy, the tension, everything about it. So the directing is spot on, nothing more to say. The writing, the dialogue in this thing, along with the acting, which we will get to, is just stunning. Really, there's not that much going on in this other than dialogue. Honestly, there's no really big shootouts. It's not one of those kind of movies. It's not like Heat where people are throwing lead all over the fucking place. It's not that kind of a motion picture. It's literally a character play put within the setting of a bank robbery. So, what you hear coming out of their mouths, the writing of this thing has to be spot on, and luckily it delivers. You're into the movie and you're riveted by the movie for the words coming out of people's faces, not the noise and the commotion, all the kind of crazy shit that usually happens in these kind of movies. It's all about dialogue, and it's well done. Actually, it's better than well done. It's friggin' amazing. And finally, the acting. Let's knock off the shit. You got a major cast in this. You got Pacino when he was still Pacino at the height of his powers. You know, that 70s Pacino to like 80s Pacino, when he was really nailing it. He was amazing in this. There's no other way to put it. And like I said before, John Cazale was, and should always be remembered as one of the great actors of maybe not even just his time, but of all time. He really was phenomenal. You could see anybody who ever talks about him, they say they learned so much from him just working with him because of the way he would get into every detail of a character, the minutiae in there. He would sit there and break it apart and give you a performance and a deliverance that was so head and above anything else. And to show you why, if you look at his really three characters, or four characters he played, he was in The Conversation, he was in this, he was in Deer Hunter, and of course, he all played Fredo in the Godfather flicks. Those characters are all diametrically different from each other. He was helpless and stupid in The Godfather, and he is terrifying in this motion picture. You always say to yourself, sooner or later something's going to break loose, and when it does, it's going to be because of Sal, because this man is fucking terminally psychotic. And the way he plays it, the performance he gives is so spot on that you don't even relate to him being Goofy Fredo in another flick. You just relate to him being terrifying Sal in this flick. The man was gifted. And of course, the rest of the cast, they just deliver. They just nail it. It is what it is. They are spot on in all their performances, from the big ones to the smaller ones. Everybody that plays a hostage nails it. Everybody just delivered, so the acting, perfection. Now let's get back to what makes this motion picture work. This motion picture lands on so many levels simply because it covers every base, and almost no motion picture can really do that. This movie is gritty. It's dark. It's legitimately loaded with dark humor and funny. Never to the point where it pushes it past the point to being like it wrecks it for anything. But it has that 70s kind a vibe. Let's face it, this movie is set in the 70s in New York City. And if anybody's ever gone to New York City, or any of the big cities at the time, you remember and see how they were. You stepped over the homeless, there was trash all over the goddamn place. So you are dealing with a society that is really kind of immune to seeing anything shocking or seeing anything crazy, kind of like today. But that is reflected in this motion picture with a sense of humor. You see the society that goes around these people, how everything is basically just a show, a production, a media circus. And it's meant for the entertainment of the outside world. And the outside world, because nothing is so shocking to them anymore, finds humor and entertainment in everything. And that is perfectly reflected in this 1975 movie, which sounds very much like something you would expect today. But in this 1975 movie, it gives you the grittiness, it gives you the irony, it gives you the humor, it gives you the darkness, it gives you all of that in a perfect balance so that you get it, but it never wrecks all the other emotions you're supposed to be feeling. It is a godsend to land on 2 feet in a movie trying to do all that. And this one did it. Now, like I said a moment ago, this is one of those movies that's really reeking of the beautiful in the documentary type style filmmaking of the 1970s. This movie is not loaded with a great soundtrack or score or any of that kind of shit. You don't really get that in this thing. Even though the movie starts off with like some radio music kind of and just over a montage of shit going on in the city of New York, just showing you how screwed up it is or was. It is literally a movie that you don't focus on a soundtrack, you don't get a score. You feel like you're watching this. You feel like it's a documentary. You feel like this is something that was put on TV with hidden cameras someplace all over the place because you're seeing it raw. You're seeing it in your face. It's not dramatized with any kind of da-da-da-da and all that kind of shit. It doesn't exist. This is the way 70s filmmaking was when it was at its best and when it was at its peak. It was really that kind of gritty, dirty, straightforward. Not playing with your emotions, but playing with your emotions through the acting and the dialogue. That really makes the movie land. It really makes the movie have the kind of impact. You don't see many movies that can do that anymore, folks. That kind of Duran's Gambit. This movie could do it. This movie did it. Also, there's not many motion pictures that can make you feel sympathetic to almost every character in the motion picture. There's parts where you're watching this, you actually feel sympathetic for the 2 Nimrods that walked into a bank, 3, but down to 2 really quick, trying to pull this off. You realize they're inept and stupid and just completely useless at most of everything that they're doing. But you wind up seeing a sympathy because you realize that they might not be totally evil. These guys are just morons. But then just when you get comfortable with that feeling, they kind of turn the Sonny character a little bit darker and they move you in that kind of way. So now you've had sympathy for these 2 guys that when seemed a minute ago, I don't know, maybe for one of them, it turns the other one a little bit dark too. So it's one of those motion pictures that makes you almost feel sympathy for the bad guys. It makes you feel sympathy for everybody in the bank. It makes you feel sympathy at times for the police officers because you see Charles Durning trying to keep control of this thing. He doesn't want to be there. This ain't like it's his party, and he's just this guy thrown into this shit, literally trying to get this thing to de-escalate any way he can. And it's completely out of his control. And that's another thing, as I segue off on this movie, that you see a motion picture where everything in this motion picture is literally out of everybody's control. The media is out of control, the bank robbers are out of control, the police are out of control, the crowd is completely out of control, and there's nothing even within the control of any of those people. The bank robbers are barely keeping it together. The cops are barely keeping it together. They're all screaming and yelling at each other all the fucking time. Everybody is just in a complete state of chaos through this motion picture. While in the middle of it, you have these bank robbers and their friggin' hostages semi-becoming, I don't know, friendly to a degree. And finally, you always have the Sonny character. And when you see the life he's surrounded himself with, you know, he's got a psychotic wife who just only can babble on about what's upsetting her at the moment. He's got another wife that's trying to have a sex change and can't quite get there. He has a mom who's completely just... Insanity sometimes breeds insanity, and you can see why this guy is a lunatic. And finally, like I always say, great motion pictures have kind of realistic characters, or at least you would hope so. And that's what this motion picture delivers. You see people in this thing that are really just people. A lot of broken people, a lot of messed up people, but just people. And the interactions between them, where you see how easily Sonny can get even bullied by the hostages in there. They're even making fun of him at points. Like, didn't you have a plan, idiot? You know, all that kind of stuff. Just shows you more how they are just being people in their own realm, in their own world, interacting with each other, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes up, sometimes down, but it doesn't make a difference. It's the human drama that sells this movie, people, not the bank robbery, not the 10,000 cops around buildings with rifles. It's not that kind of movie. It's the human drama trapped into the situation that it's in. All right, everybody, I've rambled long enough. My mind's going in 4 million different directions. Try to get this video out to you all. A lot to do. Short time to do it. Willy Wonka. But anyway, get out there. If you haven't seen Dog Day Afternoon, you have to see Dog Day Afternoon. It's one of the truly great motion pictures of all times. One of the great motion pictures of the 1970s. And one of the great, again, acting performances of John Cazale, who just, it's a shame the man left too soon. And the great irony, if you see in this motion picture, is he smoked like a chimney in real life. I mean, like a fiend. And he died of lung cancer just a few years after making this motion picture, right after The Deer Hunter. Actually, he was sick during it. And there's a scene in this motion picture where he's scolding somebody for smoking a cigarette because their nerves were shot in the middle of a bank robbery. And he says, why would you want to do something like that? And she said to him, why not? I'm scared. And he goes, your body's a temple. And she goes, why don't you do it? And he goes, I'm scared of cancer. There's an irony in that scene. And if you know the history of the man, it just grabs you and goes, oh my God. Imagine filming that and seeing where this poor guy was later on. Just saying. All right, be good. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. Be there for a friend. But before anything else, on top of that whole list, never, and I do mean never, take any bullshit from anybody. See you all soon.